when you see a bear, act super irrational.
Yeah.
Like, that's what I think that's the conversation. And you're like, yeah, what if you just acted cool, calm, and collected and just like composed yourself, right? Because
Tell me about how many times you've been charged, and I think you have a really good perspective on like bear behavior, which isn't something that always gets talked about.
Yeah.
But how many bears have you been charged by? Bluff charged.
I mean, we did like 3 summers back in that basin filming bears. We only ever sprayed 1 bear, but had like a handful of bluffs, like some that would raise hairs and others that were like at a distance that you were comfortable with. But I mean, probably around 10 or so.
Yeah.
At that point. But like I said, I had like an outstanding mentor that had raised grizzly bears in captivity and had spent tons of time in Alaska and a lot of time, like 20 years in the greater Yellowstone. And we just kind of had this protocol that was like a grizzly especially is a very emotionally unstable animal. And like they've got a short fuse, right? And it's kind of like the conversation we had was like, if you've ever had an aggressive dog before and you have them on a leash and they see another dog and they start to get like juiced up, if you yell at that dog, like, no, like the dog, it just kind of gets them juiced up even more, you know? And so bears are kind of the same way, right? Where you have this thing that is super protective and its fight or flight is typically fight, but also it knows that if it fights something and acquires an injury, that animal is the only thing that can take care of itself in the wild, right? So there's a lot of this just like indecisiveness, right? And it's explosive. And so in those moments where that bear's coming at you, everyone's like, be big, be loud, yell. And I think that for the most part, that kind of works. It's like be intimidating. But I also think what it does is it throws you off. Because all of a sudden, like you're like
amping yourself.
It's like when you see a bear, act super irrational. Like that's what everyone, I think that's the conversation. And you're like, yeah, what if you just acted cool, calm, and collected and just like composed yourself, right? Because the one language that all terrestrial creatures speak, like no matter where you go, is pitch and tone. And like how you let that out of your body, right? So
would you say that like general like confidence of tone and body posture plays a big part of that too?
Yeah.
I feel like in my experience with bears and just hunting them, like not to say that a bear wouldn't test you and try to bring it to your house and like fight you, but I feel like if you're calm and confident, they're usually like,
why is this
I'm going to go the other way? But
yep. And that was kind of our thing, was calm confidence, right? And so you have a bear that like blows up out of the brush and it's coming at you, and our protocol was just like, if we're together, kind of like step towards each other. Don't like rush, but like, this is ours.
Yep.
We're not going to leave this, and we're not going to back down. And like sometimes, you know, you'd talk. Sometimes you just stand there and shut up. Yeah. And just stand there and be quiet and see what happens. And other times, you know, that bear comes and you're like, hey, bud. Like just talk like deep, low, but confident, right? Like just put that out there, and they'll stop.
Yeah. What do you think the like proximity is that they'd usually come to before they would make that stop and have that kind of like secondary decision?
The stop and like posture, I feel like has typically happened at like the closest with that is like 30 feet.